Hey guys, welcome back. So the latest Ask 343 just came out. It was a Q&A with the audio team at 343 and they revealed a bunch more details about Infinite, relating to the audio, relating to the soundtrack and the music, relating to multiplayer, to the gun sounds and all that stuff. So today I'm going to run through all the news about Halo Infinite from this Q&A as quick as I can. So first off, they elaborated a bit more on the portal acoustic system, which is a new sound thing in Halo Infinite, for basically conveying how guns and certain sounds sound when they're in another room or if they're occluded. And the question was basically like, can you still hear gunshots through walls? Because this system is entirely new and treats audio in Halo differently to previous games. And they said that yes, you can. Basically, this portal system is there to make guns and any sound just sound as realistic and natural as possible, especially when it's occluded or obstructed by something. They confirmed that in addition to the more upbeat soundtrack pieces that we've heard so far, there are also some somber pieces akin to Heavy Price Paid from Halo 2, but they've not revealed them yet because they relate to character arcs in the game, in the campaign and the story, and revealing them would possibly spoil those character arcs or spoil major parts of the game, so obviously they can't reveal those until the game's out. Moving on to gun sound, they apparently wove the classic plasma pistol hum into the new design for the gun sound, which is great. That's a fantastic sound effect from the classic trilogy and from all of Bungie's games that I would love to see make a return, so that's good to hear. Apparently the kind of technicalities behind the new sound mixing in Infinite is going to make all of the audio more efficiently balanced for the player. So you're still going to hear, for example, enemies shooting at allies, but it's just going to be slightly lower priority in that threat prioritization system because the enemy isn't shooting at you. The sound that you're going to hear first and foremost is an enemy shooting at you directly. The music is apparently adaptive like it was in old titles, where basically the soundtrack piece changes based on the state of the game, so what the player is doing, what the AI is doing, or maybe even the player's intention, they said, so the game can kind of predict how the player might play next, so whether they're going to engage the enemy like straight up front, or whether they're going to start picking them off with a sniper, or whether they're just strolling through an environment and passing through. The music will adapt and change based on how the player and the AI are playing. And they actually gave us a practical example of this as well. So apparently you could get a music track playing as you just freely wander the Halo ring that kind of changes when you transition into combat. But also, if you just go straight into combat, you might get an entirely different soundtrack piece playing because obviously the way that you entered that combat is very different. And also, apparently even more, the music changes based on where you're at in the story as well, which is quite an interesting thing. I'm actually really excited to see how the audio changes based on when you do certain things in the game. That's a really great way to make the game sound more dynamic more than anything. They said that one of the hardest sounds to design is the vocalizations for creatures and characters because obviously, like, aliens and weird creatures don't have an actual language, so they have to just kind of create one out of nowhere that also sounds consistent between the different things they say, which I imagine is really hard. And apparently the hardest sounds to implement are vehicle sounds. And speaking of sounds, Infinite's multiplayer has 3 different types of footstep sounds. One for you, the player, one for the enemy, and one for the ally. And this kind of feeds into the next thing, in that for Infinite multiplayer, they want to really enhance situational awareness with the audio. Now, obviously the footsteps are going to help that quite a bit, but they've also said that they've got 3D mode audio for like specific modes like Capture the Flag, where, for example, in CTF, the sounds of the actual flag being returned come in like 3-dimensionally from the position of the flag object on the map, which allows you to pinpoint where it is more precisely and in turn increases situational awareness. It's quite a hard thing to describe. I imagine it's one of those things that is very hard to describe, but when you see it in practice, or rather when you hear it in practice, it makes a lot more sense. So I'm just gonna eternally cross my fingers for an Infinite multiplayer beta at some point so I can test this out. Going back to music, apparently the music in the E3 2018 trailer is not a part of Infinite because much like that trailer, the music was also kind of like a tech demo. However, the music in the E3 2019, was it called Discover Hope? That is in the game because that trailer is actually the cinematic opening for the game, so the music is going to be in the game, as is the cinematic, and apparently even a bit of it is playable as well. Going back to the new threat prioritization system, apparently the way that that it sorts sounds and the volume of them and how they play for the player is literally just based on which source is about to deal damage to the player. So if you've got two brutes, one that's firing at a marine and one that's firing at you, the one that's firing at you is going to have its audio played louder and more directly towards you because it poses the more direct threat. And on the topic of sounds like that, the audio team have built off the kind of innovations that the Sandbox team have done in terms of vehicles and the damage that vehicles take and how that affects the vehicles by innovating with audio in that regard as well. So apparently, as you're taking damage in a vehicle, like sparks and steam and fire sound effects start to play, and then when the tires get blown out, the kind of sound of the vehicle driving starts to change respective of that. And then, before the vehicle is about to explode, what they call doomsday alarm starts to play that basically tells you that you need to bail if you want to survive. Now, this really reminds me of the ghosts in Halo 2. If you guys remember, when they hit their, ultimate damage state, they started to, wind up and start, flying around on the floor before eventually blowing up, and they'd have this, audio sound in the background that was like a whining, kind of, that built up to let you know that the ghost was about to explode, and it's great to see that making a return. As for the music in multiplayer, apparently unlike Halo 4 and Halo 5, in Halo Infinite's multiplayer, the music is minimal, and it's really only there to emphasize bigger moments in the game. So, for example, music only plays during the intro to the game, during the end of the match, and also during moments that lead up to the end of the match or the end of the round. So, as Unicheck puts it, basically music only plays in Infinite multiplayer when something significant occurs. They said they want to have a cleaner audio experience in multiplayer, and so music isn't going to be as present as it was in Halo 4 or Halo 5, which I think, given their emphasis on situational awareness and improving that, makes a lot of sense. They also said that multiplayer has taken things in a different direction stylistically that still fits in the Halo universe. Now, I don't know if they were talking about the audio for the multiplayer or for something else. It was kind of like a weird off-the-cuff statement, but you can consider me intrigued. The overall sound mixing of the audio in the 2020 demo has been improved since then, which I think was a given anyway. So they did, apparently, after that demo, another pass on the Mangler and Ravager audio, so expect those to sound a lot better in-game. And the audio after that demo in general is just more refined, but apparently not drastically different, which I think sounds perfectly normal, to be honest. I expect the quality and stuff to improve, but I don't expect, entire redesigns in a year of dev. That's not particularly realistic. Apparently Infinite is not going to have any custom announcers in the multiplayer like the Voices of War in Halo 5, where, for example, you can have Buck commentating over your game instead of Jeff Steitzer. However, the player experience can be customized, assumably in terms of audio, which makes me think that, fingers crossed, we're going to be able to customize our Spartan's voice like we could in Reach Firefight. If I could have my Spartan in multiplayer running around with Johnson's voice or something, dude, you know I'm not a fan of microtransactions, right? But trust me, I would drop $10-15 on that in a hot second. Let my Spartan become Johnson and I'll get my card out. Something really, really good for any content creators out there, YouTubers, streamers, or anything else. They're working as hard as they can to ensure that all of Infinite's music is DMCA free, so you can use it in videos or play it on streams without having to worry about copyright or any of that bullshit, which is absolute, pardon the pun, music to my ears, because, oh my god, I just can't use Halo 4 soundtrack in videos. The second that I use about 3 seconds of it, the entire video gets copyrighted. It's ridiculous. So it's very, very good to see them trying to go DMCA free with the music. I honestly really applaud that. Something a little bit different to DMCA and copyright. When it came to designing the sound for the wildlife on Zeta Halo, they really tried to pinpoint certain states of the wildlife, certain behavior states, so whether the wildlife were threatened, whether they were under attack, or whether they were idle, or whether they were just dead, and then design the audio based off those behavioral states. And apparently, the sounds from the infamous Halo Infinite Pug that we all thought was the Flood got used for, now I think he said the digger creatures? It might have been bigger creatures, but it sounded like digger creatures to me.
We ended up utilizing some of the Pug recordings that we did, and those kind of got used for the digger creatures, and
God knows what they are, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Totally unsurprisingly, Jeff Steitzer is indeed back with new multiplayer VO. I mean, it's not a Halo game without Jeff Steitzer. Let's be perfectly honest, I think that's one thing that we can all agree on. Good to hear. I'm looking forward to hearing his voice. They said that there's probably not going to be any more major OST tracks released. They want us to hear the rest of the game's soundtrack in context, which honestly makes perfect sense. They also said that one of the reasons that they're not releasing it as well is that a lot of the soundtrack pieces are quite spoilery in nature. Now, whether that's due to the actual music itself or, as Unishek said, the title of the track, I don't know, but that's clearly a very valid reason to not release anymore. And finally, apparently the inspiration behind Halo Infinite's BR75 was the Halo 2 BR, which makes me very, very happy because that's my favourite iteration of the rifle. And it's not even close. And that was also the case for the audio as well. And speaking of the audio, the BR sound in Halo Infinite was made up mostly of the firing sounds of an FN Scar battle rifle, so a 7.62 variant, and also an FN M240 Bravo, which also fires 7.62. And then also various other gun sounds were mixed in as well. But I'm not surprised that that sound was based off two 7.62 rifles, considering how heavy it sounds in Infinite. Yeah, always cool to hear the actual source audio for weapons like that. And so, that's a very quick roundup of all the latest Infinite news from the latest April audio edition of Ask343. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. I'm going to round this video out here nice and briefly because I want to go get it edited, so thank you all very much for watching, I appreciate it, and I'll catch you all in the next one.